Hey everybody, this is John Jordan Chronicles YouTube channel, back with another video. Since it is the month of June, which is traditionally LGBTQ Pride Month, I am doing a video on celebrating Pride for all of the LGBTQIA plus community. I'm just gonna start off with the history and then talk about my own personal experience with Pride and where I'm at it now with where I am now with the Pride celebrations. Okay, so for those of you all who don't know the historical context, the official event that started the modern civil rights LGBTQ Pride event was the Stonewall riots in New York City at a bar called the Stonewall Inn, and this was in 1969. And that was not the first uprising of LGBTQ people, but it is the event that marked the beginning of the LGBT Pride political movement that you know today. And for those of you who don't know, police riots were routine back in the 50s and 60s on LGBTQ Pride. LGBTQ bars and clubs. So the Stonewall riot was raided in June of 1969. And instead of just cowering to the police at that point, what happened is the LGBTQ people there fought back. And that is the historical reason we celebrate Pride within the month of June. And to give a context, Stonewall Inn was a place that was frequented by those who were marginalized even in the gay community. So at that time, transgender women, butch biker lesbians, drag queens, and effeminate gay men, hustlers, which we know today as sex workers, and then also homeless youth who came out and may have been disowned by their family or may have been homeless for different reasons. The people that started the LGBTQ civil rights movement, as you can see, those people were not the average middle or upper middle class gay men. So for those of you who don't like the femme men or the trans women or drag queens or the butch biker lesbians, just know that those are the people who started the political movement. And the reasons we have most of our rights we have today is LGBTQ people. The gay marriage, the case that went to the Supreme Court, and I apologize, I don't have the women's names, but from what I remember, it was two senior citizen lesbians who had been together for many years, and their case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and that's how same-sex marriage became the law of the land in 2015. So let's give our hats off to those trans women, the butch lesbians, the drag queens, even the sex workers and the homeless youth who started the movement. And that's the historical context. Some of the people who started that movement were trans women like Marsha P. Johnson, Miss Major Griffin Gracie, and Sylvia Rivera. And today, the only one that is still with us is Miss Major Griffin Gracie. But those are the trans women who spearheaded the beginning of the LGBTQ rights movement and that Stonewall riot, which I think the Stonewall riots, the people there battled the police for about, I believe it was 2 or 3 days, fighting with bottles, physical fights, whatever they could to protest the bar being raided and the police trying to close that Stonewall Inn bar. So, and that was the beginning. You can look it up online to get more information about Stonewall riots if you want to. For my own personal journey with Pride, I don't know if I've stated in other videos, but I came out, I think we use the term inviting in today, as a gay man in the end of 1989. And so my first Pride was 89 or 90. Yeah, it would have been 1990. And at that point, Pride celebrations were grassroots, political, and legislative, from what I remember. It helped me find community with other gay people because I could go to this big mass event and meet other gay people, and the gay organizations that existed at the time, they would have booths and tents, and you could go and get information for if you want to do volunteer work or anything you were interested in the LGBTQ community. They would have information at those prides. events. I pretty much did Pride every year for probably the first 20 years, I would say. So that would have been 90 to 2010. When I went to Pride in 1990, things that were going on then were there used to be sodomy laws on the books in a lot of states where anal sex was against the law. And there was a case in 1986 here in Georgia that was Bowers versus Hardwick, which went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it upheld the Georgia sodomy laws at that time because of a narrow look at personal private sexual privacy, should say. And over the next probably took about 15, 16, 17 years, in 2003, there was another case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, which is Lawrence versus the state of Texas, which was John Geddes Lawrence and his boyfriend, Tyron Gardner. They were aided by an LGBTQ focused legal organization called Lambda Legal. And in that case, 1998, I believe, was when the case actually started in Texas. Tyron Gardner's ex-boyfriend, as they say today, being a messy queen, said, "Oh, I believe they have a gun in that apartment." So the police went to investigate, and when they went and entered the apartment, police saw Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Gardner engaged in sex, and they fined them under the sodomy laws. But Lambda Legal helped them fight that case, and that case took about 5 years until 2003 to circulate all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in 2003, the Supreme Court ruled that sodomy laws at the federal level were unconstitutional because the sexual activity was between consenting adults. So that's the reason the Supreme Court ruled it was unconstitutional. In that case, Lawrence versus the state of Texas went to the Supreme Court. That struck down sodomy laws in all the various states because that was ruled at the federal level. So yeah. So other things that were going on during that time, there was a big fight with an organization called the National Endowments of the Arts. That's an independent federal agency that grants money to projects that they believe show artistic excellence. It was started in 1965 and still exists today. But in 1996, there were some conservative groups led by a senator called Jesse Helms. For those of you who are old enough to remember him, they started getting the government to cut the funding. They're independent because they operate with a committee that is over the National Endowment for the Arts, but the funding comes from the federal government, your tax dollars. So there was a big fight about that, and there was funding cut in 96, and it took about 20 years for the National Endowment of the Arts to be until 2015, until the funding to pretty much get back to what it was before. It's back to about $150 million. It was cut in 96 to less than 100. So National Endowment of Arts is LGBTQ adjacent, I would say, because there were a lot of LGBTQ people involved, but that's not necessarily a gay organization. But that's what was going on during that time. And so those were the things that were happening when I came out. And like I said, it did help me find a sense of community going to Prides every year. It helped me to be confident in being gay, being around mass numbers of gay people at Pride events every year. And yeah, I guess that's all I want to say about that. Finally, I want to say where I am today with Pride. Like I said, I went every year from 90 to 2010, and I kind of fell off for that then me because 2010 I was 40. Oh, forgot to say happy birthday to me. I did turn 55 last month at the end of May, so I am officially 55 years old. So in 2010, I was 40, and going to Pride events every year from 20 years old up until then, I had built a lot of community through going to the Atlanta Gay Center, which no longer exists, but as a youth, like in my late teens when I was in college all the way up to my mid-20s, I went there. I formed friendships there, and in my late 20s, like around 29, maybe 30 years old, I found a lot of Black LGBT community then. There was an organization here in Atlanta called Second Sunday that was specifically geared toward Black gay men. So I found a lot of friendships in there in my late 20s, early 30s. And so I would say by 40, I had solid community connections. And I didn't feel a need to go to Pride. So I fell off for maybe about 3 or 4 years. And when I went back in 2013, 14, I did mainly volunteer work. I didn't need empowerment for myself, but I guess I was at a point of empowering other people, other LGBTQ people. So I would volunteer giving out legislation and information from like Georgia Equality, or sometimes it was health information when I volunteered at Aid Atlanta, which is HIV/AIDS service organization here in Atlanta. And I gave out health information on HIV/AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. We connected people with counseling. We connected people with testing for HIV and other STDs. And so I would just man a table at Pride and give out information to the community and that sort of thing. Differences I see today, Prides now have definitely gone from being grassroots and LGBTQ organizations like Lambda Legal or PFLAG, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and those types of organizations that were more grassroots to empower gay people. They've definitely turned into corporate events. Now, some people, go back and forth about whether that's good or not. My personal view on corporate sponsorships is that it's turned into a big mass event and not necessarily the legislative political part that I see. What I've seen is that the corporations, they do sponsorships during June, and but things throughout the year, I don't see that much after Pride Month. So I'm not sure if it's good or bad. So you get it down in the comments and tell me your opinion on corporate sponsorships of Pride events now. A lot of corporations have employee resource groups, ERGs, if you're familiar with that. A lot of big corporations have those, and they're usually for marginalized groups. So there are LGBT groups, African American groups, etc. So that's my take on a corporate sponsorship. I don't know that it's, my opinion is that it's performative and not necessarily doing a whole lot, but I'm open to different points of view. So get down in the comments and tell me what you think about corporate sponsorship of celebrating Pride today. I know it does offer a large influx of money and funding for Pride, but does it do anything to advance us, socially, legislatively, economically within the larger society? And that's where I am. I haven't been to a Pride, the mainstream Pride, or even there are many Black gay prides, which are geared specifically toward Black LGBTQ people, which those prides are more culturally geared toward Black LGBTQ, which is, they started off a lot of times a little more low key and not as big, bombastic events. So a lot of people, culturally speaking, a lot of Black people preferred that. It was a lot more when I first started going to Black prides in I think the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. It was more about community health organizations, of course, because at this point, HIV/AIDS, Black gay and bisexual men are hard hit. So there was a lot around that, and a lot of panels. I know there were State of Black Gay America discussions about things that affect us, which is things like lack of access to health care, again, coming out and different things like that. So again, get down in the comments and tell me your opinion on Pride events at this point in 2025, both mainstream and LGBTQ geared toward the Black prides is what I mean. So there, some more the Black LGBTQ prides. And that's all I have to say about celebrating Pride. I wish everybody a happy LGBTQ Pride. If you're able to come out or invite other people in, as they say today, I encourage you to do that. I understand that people won't be able to do that because of economic reasons. If you're dependent on parents who may not be receptive to you coming out as an LGBTQ person, I totally understand and don't recommend that you put yourself in harm's way until you are established on your own, and then you can come out at that point. There's been some dangerous things going on, like the LGBTQ suicide hotline being shut down, but there is still the Trevor Project, which is an organization for overall for all LGBTQ youth. So their suicide hotline is still available. Just look them up online. That's Trevor, TREVOR project, and they still have their suicide hotline. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now in this political climate as it relates to trans and LGBTQ. Of course, there's gender affirming care being cut, funding being cut. So unless you have the money to fund it yourself, that's a major issue now. So there's a lot of things going on in our current political climate with the current administration. So I want to see how you feel about how that affects Pride celebrations or just how you feel about those things in general. So I encourage you to get down in the comments and talk about it. I would say, as it relates to my target audience, the middle age, Black and gay and bisexual men, that may be part of why I'm not as engaged in the prides anymore, because I've reached an age where I am openly gay and proud and whatever you want to call it every day at this point in life. So I don't feel the need. Whereas when I was younger, I did need that because I had no community, no LGBTQ friends when I first came out. So I needed that, those pride events and that connection with the community through community-based organizations or social organizations or clubs that I joined, like science fiction clubs like the Outworlders, or different organizations that I just became a part of to form community, meet friends in the LGBTQ community, and specifically Black LGBTQ. So I want your opinion. That's the whole point of this channel. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all I want to say. So please get down in the comments and let me know your opinions. And my it's in the channel information, but my email for the channel is just a channel name, John Jordan Chronicles. That's Chronicles with an S. John Jordan Chronicles at gmail.com if you want to send me a suggestion for a video or something you want to talk about or whatever you want to do. So that's it. And I will see you next time in the next video. My next video, I plan on being about caring for elderly parents. I'm going to have a guest, and I'm going to have that video going very soon after this one. So again, happy LGBTQ Pride, and I'll see you in the next video.